Honourable Senators, on Sunday, May 4th, 2014, the nation awoke to the news of the tragic death of Ms. Dana Seetahal, Senior Counsel, a former senator on the independent bench. I now invite the Senate to pay tribute to the life of Dana Seetahal. Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It is with a heavy heart, Mr. President, that I rise on this occasion to join the chorus of voices in paying tribute to this legal titan that we knew as Dana Seetahal, Senior Counsel. How does one begin to encapsulate the multifaceted life and accomplishments of the late Dana Seetahal? For me, she was a personal friend and colleague, a woman of unquestionable character who effectively straddled the median of Trinidad and Tobago society and in the process engaged us all to champion the cause of justice for the holistic development of our country. Mr. President, there are no words to accurately and completely encapsulate the life of someone such as Dana Seetahal. At best of times, trying to encapsulate her life would be an unenviable task. Today, under these tragic and horrifying circumstances, this unenviable task has also become a most painful and heartrending one. Ms. Seetahal served in this very august chamber as an independent senator, having been appointed in April of 2002 in the 7th Republican Parliament and reappointed as an independent senator in the 8th and 9th Republican Parliaments in October 2002 and December 2002 respectively. Her life and her contribution to the development of this country went far beyond her capable and effective tenure as an independent senator in this august House. Dana Seetahal walked many roads in life. She was the quintessential Trinidadian, and she was one who can easily fit in amongst the academics and dignitaries as she would by the corn soup vendor and doubles vendor, mixing with the ordinary folk of Trinidad and Tobago. She was a distinguished alumnus of the University of the West Indies, where she read for her Bachelor of Laws degree. Thereafter, she was called to the bar of the Supreme Court in October of 1979 and enjoyed a distinguished legal career spanning some 35 years. Ms. Seetahal displayed a unique sense of public service, Mr. President, grounded in her inimitable Trinbagonian style, which endeared her to everyone. Even people who did not meet Dana Seetahal personally have felt this loss and grieves for her. I have received calls, emails and messages from persons far beyond our shores to express their sense of personal grievance and loss at Ms. Seetahal's passing. She was someone, because of her personality and because of her willingness to share her knowledge, she was someone who was easily liked by all and sundry. In the public sector, Ms. Seetahal was State Counsel 3 within the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and eventually she was appointed to the post of Deputy DPP. On the civil side, she rose through the ranks and served as an Assistant Solicitor General in the Ministry of the Attorney General, and thereafter as a magistrate in our courts. She remained to her very last day an indefatigable and tireless worker in the vanguard for reform and development of the criminal justice system in our country. The Ministry of the Attorney General has lost a critical support in Dana Seetahal, as she was in fact assisting us with a number of current important legislative measures to help with the fight against crime and improve the criminal justice system. She was indeed instrumental in the law that's being debated in the other place at the moment to improve amendments to the DNA Act, to improve the DNA law, the bill on the order paper to abolish preliminary inquiries, and of course, only last week, her last public appearance at a function was at the plea bargaining workshop she had helped my ministry to organize in collaboration and partnership with the Embassy of the United States of America. Dana Seetahal was able to contact a team of experts from the US to bring them to Trinidad and Tobago. And I was astonished that Ms. Seetahal predicated her involvement in this workshop on the basis that 95% of the criminal trials in the United States of America do not actually go to trial. 95% of the accused persons who are arrested and charged by the police, they do not go to a trial. In fact, at the stage of plea bargaining, 95% of the cases are resolved. And it was on that premise Dana Seetahal was able to become involved in organizing this workshop under the auspices of the Ministry of the Attorney General and the American Embassy. She was committed to this because it was a single dynamite to dynamite that logjam that exists in the criminal justice system. And whilst it was not a panacea for all the ills that afflict the criminal justice system, it was clearly an important solution that would have made a positive impact. Ms. Dana Seetahal was the special prosecutor who represented the people of Trinidad and Tobago as they battled with the contentious Jamaat al-Muslimin for just recompense arising out of the 1990 coup attempt. In fact, Mr. President, I remember when, as a sequel to that, years later, when I had taken a decision to give effect and implement the court's order with respect to the sale of the properties owned by the Jamaat al-Muslimin, there were very few lawyers who were prepared to take the security risk, to assume that security risk at a personal and professional level, and Dana Seetahal was among those that had called who responded positively. She was one of the few that responded positively. And when I asked of Dana, I said, well, you know, there are obvious security concerns if you take on a matter like this. Would you require security and so on? She said, no, I am my own security AG. I don't want nobody. I don't want anybody. I will deal with it. I will deal with this matter. That was the nature and the essence of the person. Away from the public glare, but still in the vein of public service, Ms. Seetahal touched the lives of generations of young lawyers throughout the region, functioning in her capacity as a tutor at the Hewarding Law School. She mentored and tutored so many law students, giving freely of her time and going beyond the call of duty to tutor those who were weaker so that they could become stronger. Those who came from jurisdictions that were not as fortunate as Trinidad and Tobago, and to whom success at the law school examinations meant everything in life, because it was the very linchpin upon which the rest of their life would be based. Ms. Seetahal was one of those rare lawyers who made time to publish and write. She took time to write not only a newspaper column, but she was an author, and she expended a great deal of effort and research to share her knowledge, experience, and wisdom, and this is reflected in her textbook, Commonwealth Caribbean, Criminal Practice and Procedure, which is now regarded as compulsory reading for any young lawyer who wants to venture into the criminal jurisdiction and practice in the criminal courts. Not only did she author that text, but even as I speak of her today, I am reminded by our conversations whereby she was going to bring out a new edition of that book, which was due to be published very shortly. She made a significant contribution to the legal profession by virtue of her service as president of the Law Association during the period 2011 to 2012. She wrote not simply books and legal articles in law journals, but Dana Seetahal was also a renowned newspaper columnist. We had that in common, and we would often tease each other because we realized that by articulating one's views, as we do here in the Senate, you stick your neck out. People know what you think because you say what you think, and then you open yourself up to be criticized for expressing your views. And in her case, it was not simply about expressing one's view and opinion, but it also had professional implications. A lawyer who expresses a view on a matter, when she comes down one way or the other, that lawyer may very well have conflicted themselves so that they cannot be briefed in that matter. And Dana Seetahal would often express views on matters of public controversy that would disqualify her from getting a brief. But that was the measure of the woman. She was not about to let any matter pass her by without her saying her piece, knowing full well that the country waited with great anticipation for her views because it impacted on public opinion and it helped shape and influence the way we think. Guided by her perceptions of what was right and just, she never took the path of least resistance or supported a view simply because it was the popular one. She was not afraid to stand alone if needs be for what she believed in. In the Parliament during the period of time that she served as an independent senator, Dana Seetahal undoubtedly assumed a proactive and leadership role on the independent bench. In the silent tradition of parliamentary matters, she was the light from whom members on the independent bench drew their strength, guidance, and direction for many debates. She was always well prepared and her contributions were well researched. She was not one who took her parliamentary duties lightly. In fact, apart from her oratorical skills, she gave freely of her legal drafting skills, and she voiced a strong inclination about how she felt laws should be drafted. In fact, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel and the drafting department in the Ministry of the Attorney General benefited immensely from Dana Seetahal's interventions in a number of areas, and I wish to place that on record. The breadth of her contribution she was prepared to make is indicative of the passion Dana Seetahal had for her profession, her country, and the region. She had a vision and worked tirelessly to realize that vision for the legal profession in Trinidad and Tobago and beyond. She was an excellent advocate in the courts, the consummate professional who was never afraid of hard work. We teased her all the time to say that she was married to her work because she was so dedicated. But it was the truth. It was her reality. Dana Seetahal was so dedicated to her career that she was married to her work because she saw the instrument of the law as an avenue for social change. Her pragmatic approach to life was reflected in her newspaper columns, where she took time to break down the most complex of legal matters and controversies. She would simplify it and break it down in a way that the man in the street could understand what was being spoken about in such esoteric terms by the validating elite and intelligentsia of the country. The man on the ground looked forward to reading her column because it gave them an insight so that they too can participate in the debate in the true traditions of a functioning democratic society. She served in so many capacities, Mr. President. I've mentioned some, but she was an assistant solicitor general, a law lecturer, a magistrate, a prosecutor, a defense counsel, independent senator, president of the Law Association, newspaper columnist, and author. Hers was an unbiased and objective view in any capacity, and therefore she earned the respect of all. The wisdom of her counsel provided guidance to our nation on many critical issues. Mr. President, when one looked at the footage at the scene and we saw one of our noted sons, Mr. Marshall Montano, in tears, that speaks to a special kind of lawyer who had a special kind of relationship with the people whom she represented. It isn't often you would see a client crying for a lawyer. In fact, some may teasingly say that it's a first for the profession. But that was the measure of Dana Seetahal. Her death has left a void in our society and the legal profession. These are extremely big shoes to fill. Dana Seetahal was one of a kind, and Dana did it the only way she knew how to do it, which was her way. May her soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to join, following my learned colleague, the Honourable Attorney General, in paying tribute to the life of Dana Sarup Seetahal. Mr. President, on Sunday morning, 12:04 a.m. by accounts, Trinidad and Tobago was plunged into a state of darkness. Our country witnessed what I choose to describe as an assassination of a very beloved human being. We in Trinidad and Tobago, like everywhere else in the world, often wait, as His Excellency the President recently reflected at the funeral of His Excellency Mr. Robinson. We often wait until Caesar is being buried to speak to the virtues of Caesar. Our daughter, our sister, our mentor, our servant, our lecturer, our family member was ripped away from Trinidad and Tobago in an event which crosses the line. Trinidad and Tobago witnessed the assassination of a very well-known prosecutor and defense attorney. And in crossing that line, the act of cowardice pulled a trigger, shooting not only at Dana Seetahal, but at the hearts and souls of every Trinidadian. A message was sent, delivered by cowards, to say, you who will stand forward and carry the business of the people and champion the rights of citizens of this country and look after democracy and morality, you be afraid. You think that there is no boundary. You know that there is no one to protect you. And whilst we may very well reflect upon what is clear evidence of a most excellent human being, Dana Seetahal, I choose instead this afternoon, Mr. President, to reflect upon what Longfellow's described as the footprints left in the sands of time. The footprints left by Dana Seetahal, which should be the legacy which we choose to remember and the legacy which we choose to inspire us to not accept acts of cowardice, to not accept the Hobbesian view that life is poor, short, nasty, and brutish, to not accept that the minority of citizens in this country who are dedicated to a life of cowardice and crime can take away our light, to not accept that evil triumphs over good. Because if there is a singular expression of unity, it is in the life that Dana Seetahal led. We've heard the Honourable Attorney General speak to her virtues of excellence in many fields. He, like I, know very well of her prowess as a marathon runner, as a prolific maker of tea, loving her couch in her office to all who she would invite to come and sit and chat about Trinidad and Tobago, about what we wish to do as people together to take our country forward. We knew her as a mentor to those in chambers with her. We knew her as a mentor to generations of attorneys who passed through the law school. We knew that wicked little smile of hers in the coffee shop after you'd finished your matters and gone to take a little break or to settle a matter. She would be there holding court in the coffee shop. We knew her in her ability to champion without fear or favor any one case which she dealt with. I recall coming against her in a matter not too long ago, which involved an unlawful arrest which was converted into a detention order under the state of emergency, where she prosecuted the interests of the state and I defended the interests of a client. But in the exchanges in court, as sharp as they were, behind her wit was always a beautiful smile. Dana Seetahal was sister to 5 brothers and 5 sisters. She was an aunt to beloved nephews and nieces. She was a person who would spend her time in equal portions, dedicated to her work and her love and her patriotism, but equally dedicated to her family and her friends. She was someone that believed that life was something which was to be celebrated and championed. And so the acts of cowardice that tore her brutally away from us are now in public discussion. People now speak today about the dichotomy between the treatment which her murder is receiving versus the treatment which others are receiving. And people ask the question, why? Why is there a difference in the manner in which we as a society treat with people? But I wish to put on record that Dana Seetahal, as a servant of Trinidad and Tobago, as a person that championed the law, as someone who sat and debated 153 bills in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, ranging from everything from the criminal law to child protection to the establishment of entities that are NGOs. She stood as an exemplar for us all. She stood readily available to every member of Parliament, and in particular to the Clerk of the House and the Senate as well, in always being available to assist in legislative drafting. Mr. President, I wish in honor of her memory to say to everyone in Trinidad and Tobago that we should stand ever defiant in the face of criminality. We should stand ever defiant in the face of cowardice. We should be encouraged by the legacy, life, and example of Dana Seetahal. We should ever be defiant against any attempt to ruin our democracy, and that those who may have felt initial shock and fear at this event should double their resolve to stand up and be counted in the same manner in which Dana Seetahal stood up and was counted every time. I encourage all of us, and in particular my colleagues on the government bench, to work together in a knitted fabric, a cohesive measure to bring about the much needed solution to the criminal element which seeks to persuade us that they will prevail. They will never prevail. And we as a country must ensure that that is not our fate. Mr. President, on behalf of the People's National Movement, on behalf of my own family, if I may be permitted, I wish to offer deepest condolences to the family of Dana Seetahal. SC truly deserved. To the colleagues who were in chambers with her, Christine and David, to her outer and larger family as they stand. And I wish to remind us all that we must live by her example and be encouraged by herself, so that her footprints on the sands of Trinidad's time can be remembered in generations to come as someone with the spark to say, enough is enough. I thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Vieira.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, fellow citizens of our beloved Trinidad and Tobago. Dana Seetahal was my friend and my colleague. We worked on certain cases together, and we often spoke on matters of mutual interest. I'm sure I speak for all when I say how stunned, saddened, and deeply we mourn her passing. Such grief and sorrow heightened by the fact of her having been so brutally and foully assassinated. As has been widely reported, Dana was an accomplished Trinbagonian of whom we can all be proud. She was one of 3 senior counsel practicing at the criminal bar. 3 senior women counsel practicing at the criminal bar. She was a fearless and powerful advocate who served with distinction both at the criminal, both as prosecuting and defense counsel. Her book on Caribbean criminal practice and procedure is essential reading for law students and a useful reference for practitioners. And she proudly served on this honorable bench as an independent senator for 5 years. In remembering the character of this distinguished senior member of the legal profession, this scholar advocate, Dana has been described as a titan, fearless and independent, married to her work, a reasoned voice on national matters of importance, and a champion for justice. Dana was all these things and more. The person I knew was warm and engaging, full of good spirit and humor, possessed of the highest ideals. I remember the younger Dana jogging all over the place, most times alone. She was fearless. Dana celebrated who we are as a people and all the aspects that make up our culture. She loved life, and she was a Trini to the bone. Dana was comfortable in her own skin, equally at ease, whether dealing with the highest or the lowest in the land. Dana was devoted to her family, and she cared deeply and openly for them. This was returned in equal measure. Although her birth order cast her in the middle of 12 children, Dana was the backbone of the Seetahal family. As her sister Susan puts it, she was our hero, she was our mentor, she was our confidant. Dana worked prodigiously at perfecting her craft as a lawyer. Cases entrusted to her were always in safe hands. She was utterly and totally dedicated to whatever matter she was handling. She was the consummate professional. It is true that we live in times of danger and uncertainty, but this dastardly and cowardly murder is a new low. It sets a dangerous and destabilizing precedent. This is a solemn moment in the course of our country's struggle for law and order. This infamy casts a stain on the pages of our history. This premeditated and carefully executed assassination goes beyond the murder of a defenseless woman. It represents an attack on our justice system and an attack on law and order itself. We need to understand the implications for the well-being and safety of our beloved nation. Dana Seetahal's murder is a wake-up call. It mandates us to reassess our country's character and purpose. It calls for frank reassessment of the existing deficiencies in our criminal justice system and our law enforcement and security capabilities, particularly bearing in mind that Trinidad and Tobago falls within a network of drug trafficking and international criminal activity, including gun running, money laundering, and drug-related crimes. And it calls us to consider whether our law enforcement architecture has the requisite capability to effectively address this latest form of terror tactics and the non-traditional types of crime. We can no longer proceed in the customary relaxed manner. We need to restore public confidence and reduce the feelings of insecurity and disquiet which now grips the nation. Among other things, we need to upgrade our security laws, develop our intelligence gathering capabilities, and allocate the necessary resources to protect those serving on the front lines and who may be at risk, in particular our judges, magistrates, and prosecutors handling high-profile criminal cases. I stand with the Police Complaints Authority Director, Ms. Gillian Lucky, in demanding action from the state to protect them. We have become adjusted and have grown to accept the deterioration of our criminal justice system. Dana's death must serve as a call to arms to all who would establish the rule of law and justice in the affairs of men. It needs to be recognized that we can't have a free and safe and stable society if we lack an overarching strategy to cope with the crime and security challenges, and if we fail to strengthen and deepen our key institutions. Dana Seetahal was an advocate for justice, and she dedicated herself to the betterment of the criminal justice system. Her courage and fortitude should not be in vain. As a friend, as a practicing attorney at law, and as a member of the independent bench, I wish to acknowledge with deep gratitude and appreciation Dana's considerable and important contributions in the law courts, in the halls of academia, in the media, in the Law Association, and in this Honourable Senate. I also wish to register my personal grief and to extend sincere and deepest condolences to Dana's family and loved ones, and to the members of her chambers. I only wish there was some way we could lighten your burden of sorrow. Dana's forensic ability, her courage and fortitude must serve as an inspiration. God bless her. She has done her part. Now it falls to us to do ours. In closing, I would like to recite the following anonymous poem, which was used in Westminster Abbey at the start of the funeral of the Queen Mother on 9 April 2002. It's called Love and Go On. You can shed tears that she is gone, or you can smile because she has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all she's left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she's gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what she'd want. Smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. Mr. President, I thank you.
Senator Balgobin.
Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to rise in tribute, but also in celebration of the life, works, and achievements of former Senator Dana Seetahal, who served the Senate from the vantage point of this bench during the 7th, 8th, and 9th Parliaments. I am mindful, as I do so, that I am perhaps the only one here who served with Senator Seetahal, myself being a regular temporary senator during the 8th and 9th Parliaments, which spanned about an 8-year period. During that time, I got to know this extraordinary woman very well as a senator. She was diminutive, yes, but a diminutive giant. A woman of extraordinary intellect, with a quick wit and an acerbic tongue. She was, through and through, a woman of the law and of peace. And yet, she did violence to a great many things. She took a sledgehammer to the glass ceiling, making her mark as a senior counsel. She was a steadfast magistrate and a strong senator, blazing trails wherever she went. She challenged the status quo in her ascent. And when she got to the top, she stayed there. Trinidad and Tobago may not yet fully appreciate what it has lost, But I can say without fear of contradiction that Dana Seetahal's passing has made every single citizen of this republic significantly poorer. As a senator, the current occupants of this place should know that she commanded the chamber. She really did. She carried herself with dignity and with strength. And I can tell you, everyone took her opinions and her contributions very seriously. She often came into sessions after they had begun, and when she stood to speak, usually had the rapt attention of the Senate. When Senator Seetahal made a contribution, it became immediately indispensable, and I saw her change the direction of a debate many, many times. I think what allowed her to do this was her formidable intellect, yes, but also her capacity to synthesize her academic training with her real-world experiences. This is an extremely rare quality, and the sheer breadth of her career and the length of her academic record often saw her finding herself as a bridge between concept and reality. In this, she was both pellucid and pragmatic, qualities highly prized in the Senate as it struggled with difficult legislation. She often found herself at the wicket of debate with keen eyes, a wide bat, and nimble feet. Senator Seetahal did not suffer fools gladly and had strong views which she was never afraid to share or to defend. She was a marvel to watch. She really was. She set a standard for independent senators that has not often been approached. She was right up there with great independents, even great independents of the recent past like Ramchand, Daley, Deusaran, Tilak Singh, Mackenzie, Mahabir Watt, the late McKnight, and others. Even as she strengthened it, though, the independent bench also helped to make her, to assist in her transformation, making her truly a national figure and a household name. She put her all into her work in the Senate because of her love for Trinidad and Tobago. There was no other possible explanation. And she served us well. We needed someone like her. She was, in the end, a daughter taken from us too soon. A calculated act of violence against one whose life's struggle was against violence. To uphold and strengthen the law, she ultimately gave the fullest measure of devotion, and in doing so, has consecrated this nation of ours, this land we stand on, in a way that only martyrs could. It is unlikely that we will see the likes of one such as she ever again. And were we on this bench to pile our achievements as independents, one atop the other, they would still be dwarfed by the shadow Dana Seetahal left behind. Senator Seetahal was no quitter. And I think that the most fitting tribute we can give to her is not to shrink in fear or to retreat in the face of ghastly horror. No. Rather, our gift to her memory in this most trying of times must be to find the strength and the resolve to rise to our full height and to rededicate ourselves to that cause for which she gave the ultimate sacrifice, the advancement of Trinidad and Tobago. May God bless her and keep her. Thank you.
I'd like to join with honourable senators who preceded me in paying tribute to Dana Seetahal, senior counsel, who was tragically murdered by execution with military-grade weapons on the morning of Sunday, 4th of May, 2014. Dana Seetahal, former independent senator, magistrate, state prosecutor, president of the Law Association, law lecturer, author, and newspaper columnist, was a much admired woman and brilliant lawyer. Dana could be relied upon to present her views fearlessly and independently, and all this formed part of her public service to Trinidad and Tobago. But even more than that, Dana Seetahal was also a friend of the Parliament beyond her days where she sat here as independent senator, proffering advice when we needed it, and she was well known and liked and loved by all members of the staff of the Parliament, in all stratas within the Parliament. She will be greatly missed, and our heartfelt condolences go out to her family in this tragic moment of unimaginable grief and pain. As we ponder this great tragedy, we ask, how can we live and what can we do to make sure that Dana did not die in vain, that she continues speaking to us in our hearts? It is absolutely vital that all of us who collectively make up the stakeholders in the criminal justice system, including us as legislators, the judiciary, the police service, defense lawyers, prosecutors, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ministry of Justice, and the media, take up the challenge to overhaul the criminal justice system from top to bottom. When you consider that the U.S. Department of State has said about our institutions in their fight against crime and the drug war, and I quote, strict adherence to rigid and often outdated methodologies by mid-level officials, as well as restrictive decision-making systems that do not empower functionaries, limit the ability of these critical organizations to innovate and to keep pace with highly flexible criminal organizations. End of quote. If we allow the murdering of those involved in the criminal justice system to pass without overhauling the system, we are destined to return to the law of the jungle. Indeed, we started on this slippery slope some time ago, when witnesses were murdered or started losing their memories or simply disappeared. In memory of Dana and as a tribute to the excellence, her excellence, let us therefore leave no stone unturned in ensuring that our criminal justice system is re-engineered to serve the cause of justice. May Dana rest in peace, and may her family draw consolation and strength from the Lord in their time of grief. Honourable Senators, we will now stand for a minute of silence. Thank you.